student movement to a whole new level, which we are going to need to succeed. Give it up for Aaron Houston.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Roseanne. And I should say that in addition to having the tremendously good fortune of being the Executive Director of Students for Sensible Drug Policy, I'm a few other things. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I can be a vicious campaigner, I'm told. I'm a friend. I'm a leader. But I'm also a person who uses drugs. And today I'm going to tell you my story. I'm going to tell you a story about how I came to the place where I am now, believing that we should end prohibition of all drugs, not just marijuana, right? All drugs. And I'll tell you that it's a very personal story, and it's actually a story I've never told to a crowd before. And of course, let's be honest, we know we all use drugs. Whether you use caffeine, whether you use nicotine, if you use alcohol, if you use marijuana, if you use DMT, if you use psychedelics, MDMA, you are a drug user. We are all drug users. But there was a time in my life that I didn't know that. There was a time in my life that I had a dirty little secret, that I had a deep, deep, dark secret. You know, I was a buttoned-up campaigner. I got involved in this movement, in the drug policy reform movement, coming from being a political consultant in Colorado. I was a buttoned-up guy. I wore a suit to work every day, and I worked with political leaders in Colorado, and yet I had this deep, deep, dark secret that I use marijuana. And I could not believe that there was any possibility that there was anyone else in my milieu who also used marijuana. Let alone other drugs like MDMA or stimulants, or who are dependent on alcohol. And of course, this is the problem. This is why drugs are not legal, because we're not allowed to talk about it. We're not allowed to talk about these things. We're a silenced majority in this country. Not a silent majority, silenced majority. And how do they silence us? They silence us by saying that you're degenerate, that you're a scumbag, that you're lazy. And you can be labeled those things by your employer, by your school, by your parents, unfortunately. And sometimes you can be labeled that by the government, by the full force of the government. And why is it that 52% of people who are in prison, in federal prison, they're for drug crimes? That is an absolute travesty. And we all know it, but we can't talk about it as a society. And that's why we're all in this room. And so give yourselves a round of applause. Woo! You know, I came into this work becoming a marijuana lobbyist. I was the chief marijuana lobbyist on Capitol, only full-time marijuana lobbyist on Capitol Hill for about 8 years. And I came into this from having not done this kind of advocacy at all, as I said. And I found out that as I took this on, that being a marijuana lobbyist is actually kind of like being a priest. And my dirty little secret transformed into something that I realized a lot of people shared with me. Because I would go to a congressional reception, and there's that congressman who spoke native Spanish and would put his big arm around me when I showed up at his event, and he would say, "Mota! This guy's the Mota lobbyist, man!" And that was a congressman, a United States congressman. But then there were the sad stories. There was a young man named John who wrote me from his pretrial confinement facility, prison, in Florida, and explained to me his story. And I read that story, and it brought tears to my eyes. My tears stained this handwritten letter that he had taken so much time to write. 5 pages of single-spaced handwritten, front and back. And John's story was this. John had a girlfriend who was pregnant, and they were having a baby, but they didn't have health insurance. And so he was growing marijuana, like a lot of people do. And he had the misfortune of being caught. And so John writes to me, and he says that he's never met the daughter that he knows is out there, who's been in this world for a year, that he's never met her before. There's the story of the woman who I worked with in New Hampshire on medical marijuana, who talked regularly about ending it all because of the pain and the agony that she was in, because of the agony of the multiple sclerosis that rattled her body every day. And she talked about ending it all because she couldn't simply get the medicine that worked for her. She was part of that silenced majority who couldn't speak up honestly about it and get the medicine that works for her, like people can get in states like this. Now, I was a marijuana lobbyist, but I didn't know if I believed in full drug legalization. I didn't know if I could actually support that. It seems so crazy, it seems so far out there. Marijuana, okay. But drug legalization, all drugs, really? Cocaine, heroin, crystal meth? And yet, I've come to that spot now. I've come to the place where I believe that. And I want to tell you about an even deeper, darker secret that I had, than being a marijuana user even. And that is that I was addicted to Adderall. And let me tell you something about Adderall. It makes you really smart. It's fantastic for staying up for a couple days in a row doing a political campaign. In fact, it's pretty much custom made for that. In fact, anybody who's ever heard of goat pills, veterans in the audience, may have been pilots, would know that they actually feed pilots Adderall and Ritalin before missions so they can stay awake. Well, I used it too. And I went downhill. And now I'm using it for, I found myself working through ever-increasing amounts of it. And it's 2002, and election day is coming up. And I'm not even involved in drug policy reform yet, but I need more Adderall. And now, I've stayed up for 3 days straight, and I didn't even realize it. And I didn't eat for 3 days. I maybe had a liter of water during that time. And now I take a drag of a cigarette and I burn my lip, and my lip doesn't heal for days. And that's my dirty little secret. It's that I've been addicted to a drug that is way, way worse than marijuana in many, many respects. But imagine a place, imagine a world where a crystal meth addict, I didn't use crystal meth. I used the privileged form of speed. I used Adderall. But the thing that people will not tell you, and the drug companies especially will not tell you about Adderall, is that it will have all of the terrible side effects that crystal meth has. Just about all of them. Pretty much all of them. With the exception, perhaps, of the degradation of teeth because of battery acid. And that's a dirty little secret out there that most people don't know. Imagine a world where a crystal meth addict who's used to cooking it up in his kitchen, contaminating the entire apartment building, potentially killing his kids, killing the kids next door, giving them respiratory problems for life. Imagine a world instead where that meth addict could go to his doctor and say, "Doctor, I am addicted, but I need this stuff." And the doc said, "You know what? Here's your recommendation. Here's your prescription. I'll give it to you. And here's some literature about getting better. I don't think this is good for you, but this is what's best. Not jail."
Woo!
And so I've journeyed to a place now where I'm at home in an organization, Students for Sensible Drug Policy, that creates safe spaces for people to have honest conversations about drugs and drug policy. And after all, I am a person who uses drugs, and I am very much at home in a place at SSDP where we say, the war on drugs is a war on us. It's a war on all of us. And my moral imperative is to tell you my story, to inspire you to tell yours. Thank you.
No one's going to leave this conference uninspired. Our next speaker is one of my personal heroes. Lynn Paltrow works in one of the